to deepen your connection to nature, and also maybe some ideas of how you can turn your yards into more effective habitat for native plants, native animals, and birds included, as well as informing you of better ways to sort of enjoy the natural world around you. I give you a plug for our next meeting, which will be on June 11th. We are going to have Ginger Woolridge, who is a co-author of this fascinating book. I don't know if it's backward on the thing, but it's The Essential Native Trees and Shrubs for the Eastern United States. It's an incredible reference manual. It's got not only species accounts, but it has all sorts of useful ways of, what if you want plants that are a matrix that, what are the deer resistant plants? What are plants with good autumnal colors? What are plants that have showy flowers? The whole 9 yards. And it's kind of a Bible, and an awful lot of the volunteers that go out and actually make site visits for Nature in My Backyard have been using this book as just an amazing compendium of useful information. So I'll be in conversation with Ginger, and we're really looking forward to her suggestions. She's got very practical suggestions of what to look for and what to use, as well as the compelling reasons why you should plant native. So that again will be on June 11th. But today we have one of our own. I'm really excited for this. We have Matt Valencic, and Matt is a board member of the Audubon Society, Greater Cleveland, and also chairs the education committee. But I was trying to think about a word that applies, and Matt always gives me grief by using superlatives. Tough, Matt. I'm going to use them. So he's a master gardener, but I would say that he's a quadruple threat. He's a master in many different things. First of all, he's a master birder. He's an outstanding birder, photographer, and does programs that utilize his own illustrations, his photographs, to illustrate the programs. But he really knows his stuff, and it's hard-won field knowledge. I mean, he knows the biology of these organisms, and he has a background at the State University of New York College of Environmental Science and Forestry. But the fact of the matter is, his information is honed by time in the field. It's the best way to gain information. So a master birder, he's also a master gardener, and as such shares his expertise with all sorts of folks on how they can enhance their yards, the places where they live, with beautiful plants, and more and more encouraging people to plant native. He's a master educator, and I referred to that. He gives so many programs at libraries and to bird groups across at Lakeside, Ohio, up at the Chautauqua at Lakeside, and the full range of things, from both native plants to your backyard, to things like a warbler warm-up, how to figure out how to identify the 35 or 36 species of warblers that might be encountered in northern Ohio in the spring. He's just an outstanding communicator, and it's fun to see him be able to bring the wonders of birds and their natural history and conservation. And then finally, a master at applying his interest and advocacy for conservation into practice. Audubon Society of Greater Cleveland is a volunteer organization. It's driven by volunteers. And unlike a lot of Audubon chapters, we actually have natural areas, and they require stewardship, an immense amount of stewardship, to be able to keep the invasive species at bay. And Matt has become the master, the guru. He's actually given programs for us before on how to treat those invasive species, the judicious use of particular chemicals. So he is, the quadruple threat. He is the real deal. He's both a force of and a force for nature. Today, he's going to be discussing spring migration and how guiding and will guide us through this season of song. It's my great pleasure to introduce Matt Valencic.
Thank you, Harvey. I'll take that. Thanks. Sometimes when you're just spreading mulch in the yard, you wonder if you have any worth. And then somebody sits there and sings your praises, and that made me feel good. Thank you. I'm going to try to share my screen here um, and try to be effective at this and make sure that I'm going to share sound. We don't have much sound in today's presentation because it would take just way too long. See how we can get me out of the corner here and increase my size. Try that one more time here. Where's my cursor? Oh, there we go. And finally, my cheater. If those of you don't have ever used PowerPoint, um, okay, turn this thing off. Harvey, am I looking okay where you just see my screen and not my my notes?
Right now, you're frozen. I'm not seeing. I'm just seeing your your general PowerPoint, not the first slide, but the
Oh,
detailed thing. So the
okay.
slideshow's started, but your face is your video is frozen. So I don't. Here we go. Okay,
Yeah,
there's why. There we go. That now that just came on. So if you back up,
back up to here.
okay, now that's working. You're perfect. Your video is still frozen, but we don't need to see the video because we're just watching your screen.
No, but I'm getting a PowerPoint unstable message on my computer, which
Right
could
now,
be
look,
problematic. Yeah. Um, what do you see now? I'm
I
moving
see.
through slides.
Yes, I see your slides. Yep.
Okay, good. Well, then let's try to move ahead here. So um, I'm going to present a few concept ideas about migration to get started. I actually don't see as many things as I'd like to see on my computer right now, but let's start with a working definition of migration. And that's the process of animals moving from one area to another at different times of the season, different seasons of the year. And so it begs the question, well, why? And the reason is because there there could be a diminishing resource, which is like food. Okay, so in the wintertime, we know in the southern migration of our songbirds and all that leaving our area, we know that they're insect eaters, and as it gets colder, those insects become less plentiful, and so the birds move south, varying distances, to find food. But in the springtime, there's a hormonal drive in these birds that is wanting them to get up and get to a place where they can have their babies and have abundant food. And so they've been in the central and southern tropics during the wintertime, and that's not a year-round place for them. So they want to go up into northern North America, throughout the United States and into Canada, and even up to the Arctic, where there's abundant places to have their babies and abundance of food available to them. So they're not the only ones that migrate. We have some species of mammals that migrate. Many of you have probably heard about the great caribou herds and some of their migrations across Alaska and throughout much of the northern part of the world up there in Finland area and all. And I am, boy, oh boy, this is not going well over here. So, okay, there are actually 32, I just learned this 2 days ago, 32 caribou herds throughout Alaska. And why am I caring about this to show you? Well, all those little spots that you see, I'm going to get a laser pointer up here. Each one of these colorful spots with a number by it represents a herd of varying sizes, numbers of animals in them. And some of them migrate a very short distance. So each one of those little colors represents the total area that that herd migrates through in 1 year. And then if you go up here to number 29, it looks like, this is the largest herd. There's over 300,000 individuals in that herd. And they cover a big geography in the mountain areas and the lowlands, and they will migrate as much as 600 to 800 miles in one direction in spring and then come back again in fall. And what they're doing in spring is moving to places where they can calve their calves, present their calves, and then spend the summer where food is abundant. But then the mountains get pretty nasty in the wintertime, so they move back down another 600, 800 miles to the lowlands. But there's an analogy here to the birds, and that the different bird species, like these different herds, they move different distances during the migration periods. And so as one example here that we might have, Harvey, can you see the rusty blackbird on there? I don't.
I do not.
Okay, so this is a map for a rusty blackbird. You'll see them again later. The blue area represents where they spend the winter. Yellow is where they migrate in the springtime or in the fall, and the orange is where they spend the winter. So they have a varied diet, but it's associated with wetlands. It's associated with wet areas where they can flip over leaves and find grubs and any kind of invertebrates and eat them. So they only have to go as far south in the winter as where there's open water. And then they move up north and they're fine up there where there's much more abundant insects and all that. So they don't really have, as birds go, a huge distance to travel during their migration. The yellow-rumped warbler, on the other hand, it's more of an insect eater, although it does get into fruits, especially loves poison ivy berries. It will also spend the winter in the southern part of the eastern United States, but it goes way down into Mexico and onto the islands as well. And then it chooses to go up to Canada for its reproduction. So its distance of migration is longer still. The bobolink, we're getting longer here, folks. Bobolinks like to spend the winter in central South America, like around Uruguay and Paraguay, where there's huge populations. And to get up here, northern Ohio is like the southern part of their breeding territory. That's over 4,000 miles for them to travel one way to get up here. So in a year's time, they could travel 8,000 to 9,000 miles, depending how far north they go to find their breeding habitats, which are fields. They prefer hay fields, but they'll also, as you can see in this picture, a field of mixed forbs. Forbs are perennial flowers that are non-woody, and that's what they prefer in there. So we have that. And then the last one I want to bring up is a representative of the shorebirds. Shorebirds are mostly breeding way up north in the Canadian Arctic, all around that circumpolar area. But many of them winter down in South America, as far down as Tierra del Fuego. And their round trip could be 19,000 miles. So just incredible the differences that we have here on migration from the mammals that we talked about to some of these birds. And what do they pack for a trip like that? Well, nature gives them a fresh set of duds, molting feathers. So they get nice new feathers, which are more efficient for flight, which they're going to be doing a lot of on their way north. And they spend time just fattening up like crazy because they burn incredible amount of resources in these continuous long flights, whether they be overnight for some of the songbirds that we have coming like right now these weeks, the last couple of weeks, or the ones like the shorebirds that could travel for 2 or 3 or 4 days before they stop to feed. And then when they stop, they spend plenty of time at that stop-off location. It's quite complicated stuff. The thing that is most important along their journey, though, is food. This is a representative of a food attractor. This is a flowering crabapple tree that's local here in Geauga County, where I live. And what that attracts is a variety of insects, flying insects, as well as ones that will lay their eggs onto their leaves and caterpillars hatch out. And this is what the migrating birds, the songbirds primarily, rely on as they're journeying north. It gets a little complicated here, so stay with me because nature is kind of complicated. Timing is everything. So the birds coming out of the south are being driven by hormones and day length and things like this. These flowering plants are being driven. Well, here you see some of the representative birds. They're being driven by, boy, oh boy, I apologize for this. You're not seeing any image in there, are you, Harvey? Just those arrows.
Just the arrows and the circles.
Oh, I so apologize. I have a new computer coming tomorrow. This has been so problematic. Anyway, the flowering plants are responding to the accumulation of heat in the environment. And the scientific term for that is growing degree days. It's a way that we can measure how much heat has been accumulated. So you see your spring wildflowers coming out in March and April. they're responding to a minimal amount of heat in the environment that pushes the plants up through the ground. They have a solid root system down below the ground. They've been dormant, and then they ultimately flower. These flowering crabapple trees, they like to bloom around 250 growing degree days. When did that happen? That happened back on April 25th of this year. The warblers and the ones that we all covet to see so much don't arrive until the first week of May, almost a week and a half or 2 weeks later. And I took a picture here a couple of days ago when I was updating this slide talk. This is Chagrin Falls, where I live. We were up to 359 growing degree days accumulation of heat in the environment, which meant that beautiful crabapple tree, all those petals are gone. That tree is totally green. It is not attracting the volume of insects that it would if it were in full bloom. It was in bloom earlier this year than it should have been, which means that the birds that get here this week will not enjoy that abundance. That being said, it's a complicated world in which we live. The moths and butterflies may be laying their eggs onto those leaves of that tree. That tree may be a host plant for certain ones. And when they hatch, those are caterpillars. And so maybe the birds that are here, they won't get the flying insects, but they'll benefit from the caterpillars, we hope. All of this has come together over thousands of years, this synchronization of movements. Someone said, well, what about the birds that get here early? I said, maybe the early birds have an advantage this year, because the ones who arrived early and had that abundance from that flowering tree with all those insects, maybe their genes will be more dominant than the ones who arrive now and there's not as much abundance. We don't know. These are all the complications of nature, but it's very challenging to be a migrant bird. All of these things you see on the screen right now get in the way of them moving their way north that could meet their demise or just favor them beautifully. If they get lovely weather, warm, and the favorable winds from the south pushing them north at the right speed, and they miss all the predators, and the habitat that they were in last year is there and abundant, life is good. But if any of those things change, it's tough. It's tough on them. The migration that we are enjoying today really started back in March and St. Patrick's Day area. Okay, so what's happening there in St. Patrick's Day? Well, as everybody knows, the buzzards arrive in Hinckley on the day of the Hinckley Festival, the Buzzard Fest. Not so much. Actually, these guys started showing up in February. They're a migrant too. They were down in southern part of the U.S. and they're moving their way up north. And now I'm totally frozen, Harvey.
Uh-oh.
There, boy, I
There
missed.
you go.
Yeah, missing back. Anyway, there was a slide in between there. So they're one of our first migrants coming north. And even though there's snow and things, as long as we keep having roadkill and animals dying out in the woods, there's plenty for the turkey vultures to eat. But then there's birds like the earliest flycatcher, the eastern phoebe, which will show up in March as well. And it's an insect eater, but it also can get along on certain amount of dried fruits and berries and things like that. And so it can do okay if things get a little tough. Tree swallows, oh my gosh, Harvey, I am so embarrassed here. This image is just not coming up. I am really destabilized. I'm going to have to ask if I can, the only thing I can think of because of the computer problems I'm having is if I could do this as once I get myself squared away, I can record this as a Zoom. And if you have a recording of a record of all the people who are on here, we can send them a link and let them watch the presentation as it should be seen. I don't think it's going to get any better. It's progressively getting worse.
Do you want to take a break to just restart it or
let me see if I can. Let me see if I can go out. If you can tap dance for 5 minutes, I'm going to shut down my computer and see if I can come back and get us where we need to be. Okay.
Got it.
Okay.
Okay, everybody. First of all, you are really great to be online with us when you really should be outside working in your garden. and or outside birding. We were talking earlier on that there was a bird that was recorded at Wendy Park yesterday called a Lucy's warbler, whose normal range is the southwestern US, like in Arizona and New Mexico. And apparently one was seen quite briefly. And as Matt was saying, that these birds, as they're returning north, they're driven by the calendar. That is, they've got day length. They're aware of day length, and that's driving their hormones, which are pushing them north. But they're subject to the vagaries of weather, and so there's been some chilly weather with northerly winds for the last week, and that seems to have solved. We've had southerly winds both last night and yesterday. So that is going to tend to push a lot of birds to the lakefront. So this is a really good time to get out and bird today, tomorrow, Friday, and get a sample of this smorgasbord of diverse bird forms that Matt's telling us about. And Jane said that she had many interesting birds in her own backyard in Shaker Heights. So you don't have to necessarily go anywhere else. Just go into your backyard. If you have Merlin, the app on your phone, play it, see if it records any kind of interesting species, and then do your best to see if you can find out who's singing and get visuals on them. It's really an exciting time of the year. It's a time that birders really look forward to. And if you've not heard about it, and Matt might be talking about this, but there's an event that happens in northwestern Ohio. It's ongoing this week. It's called the Biggest Week in American Birding. It is put on by the Black Swamp Bird Observatory. Its primary focus at Maumee Bay State Park and McGee Marsh State Wildlife Area. But there are literally thousands and thousands of birders from all over the world who are converging on northwestern Ohio, primarily to see the show of these warblers, because it's the only place where you have a chance to see as many as 36 different species in one place, theoretically, at one time. And it's kind of neat to see something in Ohio be renowned as a global natural history phenomenon. They indicated this year, too, for the first time, they have the continent of Antarctica representative. They had somebody who was at one of the field stations in Antarctica when they registered for the biggest week. So they can now say that they've got participants from all 7 continents. So pretty cool. So it's a great time to learn about those kinds of festivals, but it's also a really important time to bird your local patch. And your local patches could be your backyard, or could be, a small little pocket habitat down the street, and get a sense of how different species of birds are utilizing those places. Exciting.
I'm back, Harvey.
All right, you're back.
I need Melissa to give me sharing privileges again, though. I think oh, there we go. Thank you, Melissa. And we're not going to worry about the sound on here. We're just going to try to share this and see if we can be more successful. Okay. How are we doing, Harvey?
Looks good.
Okay. So we left you off at St. Patrick's Day, and oh, I'm starting to see. So that turkey vulture, you see, he had some of his buddies here that I wanted to show you too. They like to hang out and spread their wings so that they can dry out in the morning and get nice and warm, because it's cold out and they want to get the blood circulating. But I just wanted you to see the face that only a mother could love. Another mother turkey vulture. So, but our little buddy, the Eastern Phoebe, a dark little bird that has a twitchy tail, is our first flycatcher that shows up in March. And boy, I've seen them in snowstorms. again, they get by because they can consume some dried fruits like old crab apples and things of this nature, besides insects that are alive, insects that are dormant under the branches and things like that. They peck around, they're around buildings and stuff. So they're pretty well adapted, very diet, versatile birds. The tree swallows are amazing, though. This really blows me away because these are 100% insect eaters. They eat insects on the wing. They fly around over water to try to catch bugs, or over uh, any kind of an agricultural field or fields and like crazy. They are here when the ice is just off of the lake. So that didn't happen until March of this year. Some years it happens in February, but we had ice sticking around longer this year. And 2 weeks into March, there's these tree swallows, and they're flying over the reservoir catching insects, which means that there are insects relatively right after ice out, that are hatching out of the water of the reservoir, and these birds are catching them and eating them. That is just amazing to me. I mean, I think of warm water insect hatches, think, trout streams and big mayflies and all of that. Just amazing. My harbinger of spring that shows up in March as well as the red-winged blackbird. I think the female is a stunning bird in beautiful light. She blends in so well with the environment, so she's not quite a target for predators. The song is incredible, and a little bit later here, as the cattails start getting taller, they're going to weave a nest amongst the cattails and have their babies right next to the water there. I talked to you about the rusty blackbird earlier and its migration. Not too far south, it just has to get there. This is the kind of environment. If you find some nasty, wet little spot that you wouldn't want to walk through, well, there's a lot of invertebrate life, animals without backbones, slugs and grubs, you might want to call them, and things like this. Anything that's aquatic. And these birds will flip those things over. So as long as the ice is not there, they can make a living getting by quite well. So they arrive relatively early, and they'll eat just about anything that crawls around that they can consume. We have some early sparrows like the fox sparrow, which is really pretty. It's got these rusty colors mixed in with grays, and you can see it's early season. It's all puffed up trying to stay warm. It's got all those feathers creating dead air layer between its actual skin and the outside of the feathers. But they're a little scratcher here. I got a little video from under a bird feeder, and you can see right in the center of it is a fox sparrow along with a couple of juncos. It's not a very good quality video, but hey, it's something. Another sparrow we don't think of as sparrows, but it's a big one, is the eastern towhee. Drink your tee is its song as it's singing right now. And a stunning bird that is more adapted, like sparrows, to eating seeds and as well as insects. The female is real buffy color. So again, she blends in better when she's sitting on a nest. But when she has babies, you're going to see her flying around with caterpillars in her bill. And that's because caterpillars are like superfood for baby birds. They, first off, I think it's important. Nobody ever talks about this, but they provide a lot of moisture. These birds cannot get any water, these babies. So a caterpillar is full of juicy moisture, and then all the nutrients that are available throughout its whole body. It's just the perfect food. And as someone's put, it's nice and soft, and the parents could stuff it down the baby's throats. So that's kind of cool. But you're going to see a lot of that. In March, we also have the woodcock. And if you've ever had the privilege of being on a woodcock walk at dusk at the end of the day through one of the park services, there's many of them throughout March and into April. As long as the ground is not frozen, these guys can take that long bill and poke it down into the soft mud and find worms and grubs and things like that to eat. And then as it's almost dark, very last light, you start hearing them painting out in the fields. They come out of the edges, the thickets, and go out into the fields and call for a mate with this painting sound as they're walking a little circle, and then do this incredible nuptial flight way up high. And as they're coming down, because of the shape of their primary wing feathers, those ones that are at the very tips of their wings, they make these cool sounds and whip, 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 boom, and they land right where they took off. I mean, that's, and you can't even see hardly. And they're doing that, and they'll do that several times through the evening. So Again, these are March birds, and they're more adaptable to the cold weather and to the supplies. But the real big ones that March is a migrant for is waterfowl, and they eat lots of stuff. So all the waterfowl really need is for the ice to get back, to get off of the water, whether it's the lakes or the backwaters or the marsh, or the wetlands of different kinds. Because look at the array of things that they can eat. As a group, we talk about, I know that we're down 3 billion birds from 20 years ago and all this in the songbird areas, but waterfowl are doing much better because of that great versatility, perhaps because they go to areas that are very remote, that are not as impacted by human activity and all that. But I think a big part of it is their ability to go and eat just almost anything that's available out there. One of my favorites, this is a summer breeder. We only have two ducks that breed here in the summer dominantly, the wood duck and the mallard. Just a stunning bird here. They're cavity nesters, so they prefer an old pileated woodpecker hole, but we can accommodate them with these artificial cavities, which I'm sure if you've ever walked near a wetland, you've seen some of them out there. Mom and dad moving together. This is Sheldon's Marsh. On your way out to McGee, stop there. That's a great walk to see them in there. And then just who doesn't like a wood duck? So they're just gorgeous. But besides the wood ducks arriving, we've got American black ducks that are there. It's a dabbler. We've got the buffalo heads, which are cool. Look at that orange, or I'm sorry, the pink feet on there. Coots, they're not a duck, but boy, when you find ducks, you find coots. They're vegetarians primarily. They eat a lot of vegetative matter. The two ducks that are oftentimes confused as you're new to birding, you'll get better at this and you'll never mess them up again, is the canvasback up there. Let me get my laser pointer up here again. This is a canvasback with the long ski slope of a bill and the red head that has more of a duck bill, let's just call it. But look at the white back on the canvas back and the gray back here. So once you get comfortable looking at your ducks in the springtime, you'll spot that canvas back, even the female. She's brown, but you see that shape to her head. So don't let the color red of the head confuse you. And then, of course, the elegant little gadwalls that are puddle ducks as well. Diving ducks like common goldeneye will be out on Lake Erie, as well as the long-tailed duck. And this one's going all the way to the Arctic Circle to have its babies. It's going to be on the tundra up there. There's mallards, the ubiquitous mallard everywhere you go, and the elegant northern pintail. We've got three different mergansers that will be migrating through in March, the common on the top here and the red-breasted. And then the hooded merganser, which acts very much like a wood duck. In fact, occasionally you'll find them breeding in Northeast Ohio. Not so much, but every once in a while. Ringneck duck, this bird arching and where my cursor is right now, my laser pointer, that's where the ring around the neck is found. For a long time, I didn't see that. Someone had to point that out to me. So I said, geez, why do they call this a ringneck? It's not really that obvious. Ruddy ducks by the hundreds when you find them when they're making a big movement through, and the big spatula bill of the northern shoveler. They're kind of cool because they slurp stuff off the surface. They get in really shallow water, they stir up the bottom and get all the little invertebrates and things moving around, the insect larvae, and then they actually have like a sieve inside that bill as they squirt the water out. They clamp the bill down, the water squirts out, and there's little sieves in there, almost like baleen on a whale, and it keeps the good stuff in and they can swallow it. Finishing up here with the two different kinds of scops and the American widgeon, blue-winged teal, green-winged teal. It's amazing. There's over 20, I think about 23 species of ducks that we see every March. So migration is going on in March, and they're following the food, but basically they're following open water and they'll get to the food, which is going to be up there at the other end. So what do April showers bring? They bring more birds, of course. Our first April warbler that we all look for in that first week is the Louisiana water thrush. This one is looking for a clear running stream, a little bit of a ravine. And then there's the northern water thrush. It's cousin, so to speak, that gets dirty feet. You see this on the back edge of McGee Boardwalk, where the little channels are in the back. Up, and there goes the computer trying to give me a slideshow here. These are black and white warbler. It moves along on branches like a nuthatch. Then you've got palm warblers with their wagging little tails. If you spend any time in Florida in the winter, you will see the palm warbler back here. I'm going to try to keep ahead of this silly thing where it's acting like a slideshow. The pine warbler, middle of April, you're going to find them. And guess where you're going to find them? By pine trees. You can also find them if you go down south to Hilton Head. In the summertime, they're breeding all the way down to Florida and all the way up to Ohio. So we've got them here. The yellow-rumped warbler, you saw the distribution map on that. They're arriving in some good numbers in April. And look for them around poison ivy, but any place where there's insects. Oh boy, here we go, folks. This was part of that instability that I had earlier. The yellow warblers, sweet, sweet, sweet. I'm so sweet. The male's got the lovely stripes. The female is more just yellow stem to stern. And then we've got wetland species in April, like these, the rails, the Virginia rail here. You can get a view of the environment amongst cattails and rushes and sedges and things. It's got a big long bill. It's just looking for anything that moves that it can eat. And then the sora. We got the word rail off of here a while ago. Both of these birds, you could hold them in the palm of your hand. So they'd be a handful, but they're moving through the area with their unique calls at dusk in the evening. Both of the yellow legs, the lesser and the greater, you can get the sense of which is which here. And they're pretty stunning as they move through the shallows looking for any kind of invertebrates as well, and solitary sandpipers. So these are winding down now. Our lakes are filling up and wetlands and things like that, so we're not seeing quite as many of them. Our first green herons. This is another bird you'll see at McGee. If you walk along certain areas of the boardwalk, you'll be lucky enough to see one of them perched on a branch or moving through the shallows. And they'll eat just about anything that moves. I've got pictures of them with big bullfrog tadpoles in their mouth. They just absolutely love any kind of thing. American bitterns, not much of a breeding area for us here, but a migrant through our area. Hard to find, but boy, if you listen to them at dark in the swamp with a gulgunk calls, they're really pretty amazing. But look at the feet on this. This bird was actually, those of you that are on the west side of Cleveland, this was in the Rocky River Reservation, right along the bike path. And I just sat there off the bike path and took pictures for over an hour. And it was amazing. Usually this bird is so secretive, you're lucky to see one every few years. We've been seeing in the last few years the great egrets spending a little more time at our inland reservoirs, but on their way up to the wetlands up along Lake Erie. These pictures probably came from McGee or Sheldon's Marsh or one of those places, but they will breed up there. The Mentor Marsh is another place you can find them breeding in the summertime up there. And of late, the last several years, we have been getting common gallinues in April. And this is a very common bird in Virginia and the Carolinas and all this sort of a thing down to Florida. But they've been moving north a little bit. And we have a couple places where we have breeding pairs. When they have the baby, they're kind of gawky looking. They like to walk across the top of the spatter dock, following mom and dad around. Pretty much vegetarians in there. The April will also bring our two summertime hawks. So the osprey is the first one here. A fish hawk was a name years ago. And it literally sacrifices itself for the fish. It soars around, sees a fish in the shallows, dives down, gets totally wet. This is not a duck. This bird does not float. And it grabs a hold of the fish with its substantial talons and brings it out of the water. And now the bird is sopping wet. This is a big fish here. This is one of the largest I've ever seen an osprey take. And it's got to fly away. And when it gets up about 100 feet up in the air, you'll watch it stall for a minute and shake like a dog and watch all the water come off its feathers. Kind of like when they de-ice a plane to get the weight off of the bird. And where is it going with that? In the summertime, they're going up to their nests on the top of cell phone towers. This is the ODNR spent a lot of money putting in artificial nesting platforms throughout many wildlife areas. And simultaneous to that effort, cell phones were taking off. And when these towers went up, ODNR stopped putting out their platforms because the cell phone towers were more agreeable to the ospreys than the much shorter 10 or 12 foot other platforms. So really cool to watch them feeding their babies up there all summer long. The other one is the broadwing hawk that starts showing up in April. They come in huge numbers during migration. Last year in 24, we went to Texas to go birding, a handful of us, and we got to see the birds coming in groups of 500 or more coming out of Mexico the first week of April, and they were heading north. This is a forest hawk, so we don't see as many of them, and occasionally we do hear them, but they're in the forest looking for birds, looking for small mammals and all of that. And if you're lucky enough to see one soaring overhead, you can see the banding on the tail, which is pretty characteristic of the broadwing hawk. We're going to get some swallows in here too in April, late April. This is a bank swallow. They look for eroding banks. Now that could be natural up along a river, but it could also be in a sand and gravel yard. Geauga County has huge sand and gravel deposits, and some of the sands are so unique that they're actually sold around the world. And as they're creating these large quarries, they have these walls, and boy, the bank swallows around central Geauga County are just incredible because they've got plenty of these walls. They are unique. You have a little band on the throat here, but each one of those cavities will have two birds in it. And you say, how would mom and dad know which is which? But they somehow do. So pure insect eaters here again. So they're coming when the insects are more abundant. And those babies aren't going to show up until the month of May here when really the bugs are more reliable. And I use bug generically for insect. So I know what a true bug is. And then we've got cliff swallows. So under buildings, under bridges, near water, got to be near water, they will build nests that look like gourds. And according to what I read at All About Birds at Cornell's website, it takes 900 to 1,200 mouthfuls of mud to create one of those nice gourd-like nests in there. And then the winter just destroys them all because all they are is mud. And the wind and the snow and the rains and everything else take them all down. But these will be right next to the water because, again, they catch insects on the wing, as do purple martins. But purple martins will be more in the farmlands. There's plenty of insects in the agricultural areas. And we have a lot of Amish farms in Geauga County. And almost all of them have some kind of a structure, more of a multifamily dwelling like this that they can raise and lower and clean out, especially because of this guy up here in the corner. Everybody knows the house sparrow, an unwelcome guest, that any kind of a cavity and the house sparrow is going to get in there. In our barn, we have horses and we open it up. And right now we have another batch of barn swallows that come in every year and they make a nest right over the main aisle where we walk all the time. And they perch there at night and poop. And someone was complaining to me yesterday, how can I get rid of them? I said, don't get rid of them. Find out where they're pooping and put a bucket underneath there at night and catch it so it doesn't stain your cement. But when those babies come, they are very demanding. And these parents, as soon as we open the barn doors in the morning, the parents are out at first light and they're catching insects and coming back. And this goes on all day long. Just cram the insects down the throat of the birds, and then they sit and wait. And you don't even have to see the parents. The birds, the babies know if you're in the barn, you hear them chirping, you just stand and look up at the nest, and about 2 seconds later, an adult will come in. Very cool. Tiny birds like a ruby-crowned kinglet. We've had the golden crowned kinglet all winter, a little 4-inch or 4.5-inch bird that survives the winter, makes the rest of us look like a bunch of sissies, I'll tell you. But this bird, when it gets mad, it gets excited. It raises up the red that we otherwise don't even see on its crown. So a tiny bird, about the size of a blue-gray gnatcatcher, about 4 inches, 4.5 inches. And these guys will make a living. Do you see the tiny insect at the tip of the bill right there? You got to eat a lot of that stuff to get full. So you got to... They're adapted. It must work because we got a lot of blue-gray gnatcatchers around. I don't hear them very well because they're in a pitch that's too high for me. But when you see them, they're just busy little guys constantly eating. And then there's my little annoying buddy, the house wren. I have friends who love house wrens and all their chatter. They drive me nuts. And the reason they drove me nuts is this picture. Several years ago, when I was feeding birds during the summer, which I don't do anymore, um, the sunflower seed feeder got half empty. And one of those little guys goes in there because it's the habit of a house wren to create a half a dozen different nest opportunities and let the female pick one. And this one decided that my bird feeder was a great cavity. And every other bird that came there, it would jump out and chase them away. And I talked to my wife. I said, how am I going to get rid of this thing? I don't want to hurt it. And she said, why don't you just fill up the bird feeder? So thank you, Patty, for solving the problem. Nobody was hurt, and except probably the bird's feelings that it now had one less cavity. So back to sparrows again. Now we've got the field sparrow showing up in April. Just a real pretty little bird with a little drop, what they call it, a bouncing ball sort of a sound is how they describe the song there. The winter American tree sparrows are supplanted with the chipping sparrows in our environment now. So they both have a little bit of stripes. They're different colors, but they kind of like swap out there in the month of April. And of course, the vespers. When we were in Arizona this year for our 1 week bird trip, we saw lots and lots of vesper sparrows the third week of March. And we had to wait until the third week of April up in Geauga County to see these guys. And where did we find them this year? They did a controlled burn at a park called Frowing Meadows, and they were on the controlled burn area. There were birds all over that burn, eating all the seeds and everything because the burn goes through pretty quickly and doesn't destroy everything, and the birds just love it. So ordinarily they're along the edge of a green mowed area next to the fields. So they like to come out in that shallower grass to look for insects and seeds and things like that. We start hearing the brown thrashers calling in the thickets along the edge. I realize this is a picture in the fall of wonderful dogwood berries. This is a great native plant to have in your yard because look at the abundance of berries in the fall, all very edible for the birds. We may see some hermit thrushes showing up, and they're pretty hardy birds. You can see the snow on that picture on the left. For some reason, these guys like to show up. Again, I think they've got a varied diet as well. They prefer insects, but they'll go to the dried fruit too and look for dormant insects and things to eat as well. But what does everybody wait for? It's like you flip a switch on May 1st and the colors just show up. All these different groups of birds are starting to come, and they come in abundance. So it starts with the universal question birders are asked, when will the hummingbirds arrive? And our answer is usually put your feeders out about 10 days to 2 weeks before May 1st. And because there are some early arrivals, but basically by the first week of May, you're seeing hummingbirds all over the place. And if you really want to attract them, besides that hummingbird feeder with a nice solution, please no red dye. They don't need dye in there. All they need is the feeder that's got the colorful little plastic flowers. But if you can hang your feeder next to some kind of petunias or any other flowers with a deep throat that has nectar in it, you will see more hummingbirds in your yard. So I know that may not be a native plant here. I don't know my petunias as well, though someone can correct me on that when this is over. But we do that every year. We have 2 hanging baskets, one on each side of a shepherd's hook. And there's a third shepherd's hook that comes out in between them, and that's where we hang our hummingbird feeder. Glorious edge. Birds love edges where they can go out to get food in an open area and come back and hide amongst the stuff. And some of the birds that like to do that are the flycatchers. We have an Acadian flycatcher up here on the left. This is a bird that's going to be in the forest near the edge, and it's going to be it's in the mid canopy, so close to the ground. All the way to the right is a great crested flycatcher. It's going to be in the treetops along the edges over there. And then in the middle is the eastern wood pewee, another forest dweller that likes to be along the edges as well. In the fields, you have the willow and alder flycatcher. You only need one picture because those birds both look the same. I imagine someday they're going to group these birds back together again. They've been grouped together and pulled apart a couple times, but their song is distinctive, and you can tell the difference here. The least flycatcher, a very small bird that makes a chebek, chebek kind of a call. Pretty distinctive appearance. Look at the round head, little round body. It looks like a little tough guy to me, with a dominant eye ring too. And here's one of my favorite birds, of the big flycatcher, Tyrannus tyrannus, the eastern kingbird. And I get this love of this bird because I have a picture of it attacking a red-tailed hawk that got too close to its breeding territory. And it literally is pecking the head of a flying red-tailed hawk. That to me is attitude. So, but these guys will be by a pond or a lake or a wetland, and they'll perch on an open perch, and they'll fly out, catch insects on the wings, either eat them themselves or bring them back to their nest. So this nest is actually in a flowering crabapple tree, and it's right next to a large pond. So very appropriately placed. You'll find blue-winged warblers in the woods in mid-canopy, and they're going to be a summer breeder. But the Philadelphia vireo is one that's just passing through in the month of May. I have not seen one yet here, but all the vireos have sort of a distinctive undertone to their calls. So once you hear some vireo calls, you'll get better at identifying them by their calls. The red-eyed vireo on the left is a woodland bird at the treetops. It's a real dominant song, along with that eastern pewee, in all of the forests here in Northeast Ohio. And if you get near the sycamore trees and edges, again, up in big trees, the warbling vireos, they seem to like being near water as well. They've got a very complicated song that's just like a bunch of crazy things wiving in and out. And then the one that's hard to see because it really likes to hide in the thickets is the white-eyed vireo. Not so much so with the red or the yellow-throated vireo. Again, each with a distinctive call, and they're just showing up now. Lovely colors, great when you spot them. We had that hermit thrush earlier. Come May, the Swainson's thrush and the gray-cheeked thrush will be moving through. They're definitely on their way to Canada. But we will keep the wood thrush with its beautiful flute-like song, along with the veery, which has one is an ascending song and the other is a descending song. So they'll be in our woodlands as well. They like sort of a semi-open large woods, and you can hear them more than you can see them. They have this annoying habit too of flying off of a perch and going to a new one and just standing still. They don't move like the warblers. They just move so I can see where you are. Not so much there. We've got a couple of orioles, the orchard oriole on the left that has been showing up here for the last week and a half or so, and the Baltimore oriole that's also prevalent. Again, the Baltimore likes to be near water. The orchard oriole, as the name implies, more of that. You can imagine what an orchard looks like. It likes that sort of vegetation around trees. And if I haven't mentioned up to this point, trees are the main thing here. We talk about a lot of things for pollinators with flowers and forbs and things like that. But trees are the big things for the birds. They flower in the springtime. That attracts insects. They are the host plants for the eggs of moths and butterflies that hatch into caterpillars that are the mainstay of the food for these birds that come here and spend the summer. So, and everybody eats insects. Everybody eats insects. Not everybody eats seeds. But then those trees will also produce seeds that some of the seed-eating birds, as well as a lot of other wildlife, will benefit from in the fall and throughout the winter. So trees, trees, trees. If you're a bird lover, pick some trees of your choosing. Any native tree will do. Satisfy your visual ideas first, and pick from 2 or 3. There's so many out there from which to choose, and the Nature in My Backyard folks can help you with lists of things to choose from. If you get into the wetlands, in the evening, you're gonna see the little marsh wren. Can't find them? Let me give you a little close up here. And when these guys sing, they're in there chattering, and they're hard to hear, but they're hard to hear during the daytime because they don't sing much. But you get there at dusk or first thing in the morning, and they'll be making a lot of noise for you. Catbirds are everywhere in thickets, along the edges of woods, in the yard. They're up and down our driveway. We can hear them all the time, trying to mimic A brown thrasher, not as effective as they could be. Sounds every once in a while, they do sound like a cat whining, but you can see that complex thicket that the bird is shown to on the right there. Treetop birds, rose-breasted grosbeak. Get them confused with cardinals and with robins. Their songs are so intertwined. I just haven't. I just have to get Merlin out and help me sort through them all. Male is stunning in his colors. The female looks like a big sparrow. We've seen a lot of them the last week or so. A lot of the females moving around, getting nest material and things, putting them together. And if you like vibrant colors, you got to love the scarlet tanager. The male is so brilliant, so alarming almost in its color. And then nature is so kind. The female birds are more drab, so they're not an easy target for predators when they're sitting still on their nest. So the accommodations of nature. But the grand finale, we're finishing up, folks, and that grand finale is all about warblers. And I think Harvey was talking to you. I caught a little bit about McGee Marsh. If you go to McGee Marsh in March, this is what you will find. Nobody, no birds, nothing. But if you go to McGee Marsh this afternoon, this is what it's going to look like. I kid you not. If you've never been there, you got to go just for the experience, just the mass of humanity. Everybody's on that boardwalk. And go back again, take a look. That narrow boardwalk has thousands of people on it. It stretches for about a mile, winding through the wetland, flooded woodland forests in here. And you get so close to so many birds. You get to hear the songs over and over again of some of the birds. You get to watch their antics and all that. And if you don't like the birds, go there and watch the antics of the people. They're just almost, it's a lot better than going to an airport and watching crazies in an airport. So let's look at some of the ones that are moving through and moving north. And then we'll finish it up with our breeding birds, and we'll call it a day. Here's the black and white on the left we talked about earlier, and the black poll on the right, poll meaning head or cap rather. So they're a little bit different. The one on the black and white warbler is going to act like a nuthatch. The black poll is going to be like a regular warbler, just going to be busy, 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 moving through the branches. Orange crown warbler is really, really drab, hard to identify, but it has an eye ring you have to work on. Tennessee warblers, once you learn that song, it's really complicated, but if you can hear that pitch, you'll spot them like crazy. There's a lot of them around right now. The bay-breasted warbler gets its name from that bay color, like a bay horse. And in the fall, it changes completely. So I'm going to try to keep up with this crazy computer. It's going to change, and it's going to look like a black poll warbler does in the fall. And those are two confusing fall warblers, black poll and bay-breasted in the fall. In the spring, not at all. You'll never confuse them. This is the bird that got me started birding in 1974. I said, I want to see more birds like a black-Burnian warbler. I wish I could see more birds like the black-throated blue warbler. They're a little harder to find, and the female is just so drab, but both of them have this little white handkerchief on their wing. And if you look for that mark, you'll know that you've got a black-throated blue warbler. Canada warblers were talked about earlier before we started the program. Gorgeous birds that we don't know much about what they do when they move out. Cape May warblers, these are birds that sip nectar. And this bird on the right is, go back here again, this bird on the right is feeding on the nectar of American black currant, which grows along the boardwalk at McGee. So if you find the black currant, keep your eyes open for Cape May warblers near the ground. Very easy to see. If you like to take pretty pictures, the chestnut-sided is more than happy to pose for you. They're one of the least skittish of the warblers. If you're really, really lucky, one of these Kentucky warblers might be out of place. It's a more southern warbler, but occasionally shows up in these migrant hotspots, as does the Kirtland's warbler that's on its way to the upper reaches of Michigan in the glove, up to the jack pine forests up there. Magnolia warbler, noted most especially, I'm going to go back and forth here once, most especially for its tail that looks like it's been dipped in black ink, but otherwise is white at the base and black at the tip. Just stunning colors here. Remind you a little bit of that, of the Canada warbler again, but a necklace hanging off here, a very fancy necklace, if you will. One of the hardest ones to see is the mourning warbler because they love dense thickets. But if you can get a sight of them with that gray hood and everything, just stunning birds. You'll hear them. They've got a pretty powerful song. Get to know that song, and you can be, you know that they're there. That's one thing about bird song. You may not see the birds, but it's satisfying to know that they're there. Nashville's been around like crazy the last couple of 3 weeks. The white eye ring on a gray hood. Again, a southern bird that shows up periodically is the prairie warbler. You might see these in the fall as well, but they're more abundant when you get down into the southern states. Wilson's warbler is a late comer, although we did have a Wilson's this week at place that's, what do we call that? Blue Heron Preserve. And it was right in the thickets near the water. It seems to like that as well. Down in the Cuyahoga Valley National Park, you'll find yellow-throated warblers. Otherwise, keep going south in Ohio. They're much more abundant down there. And now we're going to finish up on the Northeast Ohio breeding warblers. And we're going to start with the ovenbird. Gets its name from the fact that it makes a nest on the ground that looks like a Dutch oven. And it will actually enter that nest from the side. But otherwise, you might confuse this with one of the thrushes if you were watching the thrushes earlier. We've got the American red start and the yellow start. That's a sarcastic comment for the female American red start. Every place that the male is orange, she is yellow. So really the tail is a great indicator, and these, what we call like the shoulders here on the flanks of the bird just below their wing, are great for colors. I'm not much on songs of the warblers to memorize them, but my good friend Kelly says that the American redstart starts the season out singing its own song, and from that point on, it copies everybody else's. So very hard to tell. I like to get visuals on all my birds. The common yellowthroat, that mask of the male is just so distinctive, and they're everywhere, witchetting in there. The female, she's going to be kind of drab, yellows and grays and drab colors here. But again, a nice coloration if you're spending your days sitting on a nest and somebody's trying to find birds to eat. It's not going to eat you. The hooded warbler, look for a thicket inside of a woods, and that's what the hooded's like. Prothonotarians, you've got to get along the flooded swamp. A swamp is a wetland dominated by trees because this is a cavity nesting bird, and it wants either a natural cavity like you see there or an artificial cavity to nest in. And it will aggressively seek out bugs amongst the edges of these wetlands. And that's why sometimes you see these feathers are all wet above its bill. They're all schmutzed up in there. Here's the Prothonotary on the left and the blue wing on the right. They look kind of similar. If you're new to these birds, I'm going to go back here. If you're new to these birds, you might confuse the two until you realize that the habitats are so dramatically different. You will not find the blue wing along the swamp, and you will not find a Prothonotary in the thicket next to the field. So if you can remember that, and we do have if you're interested, we do have a warbler warm-up that's recorded on Zoom. We can send you a copy. Just send a request to somebody at Nature in My Backyard, and it'll get to me, and I'll send you a copy of this so you can get good on the warblers. The pine warblers, again, that's one of our early April birds. Look for them around pine trees. And they're singing right now as well. The Louisiana water thrush, this one wants to be along that Clearwater stream. They're a breeder here. And then the cerulean warbler, this picture on the right is from the internet because Matt still does not have a good picture of a male cerulean warbler. This is a picture I have of a female or a winter bird. They molt in the fall, they look like that. But this is such a treetop bird in breeding plumage that I just haven't been close to one to be able to get a decent shot. And the yellow warblers, they're all over the place in fields and thickets around edges, especially around wetlands, looking for any kind of a shrub to put a nest in. And with that, I'm going to say, I'm glad that this is over. I apologize for the performance of the computer. This is actually in 6 or 8 years of doing this. That is the first time that I've had computer problems like this. But anyway,
Great,
That's it.
great job, Matt. Thank you very much. And we are not going to do questions because Melissa has a hard stop at 10 minutes past 1, and that is right where we are. So
Okay.
perfect. Outstanding program. I'm sure some things will show up in the comments. And again, this will be archived at Nature in My Backyard. Thank you, sir. Now
You're
go out birding.
welcome. Oh, that's what I'm going to do. Thank you.
And we'll
Bye-bye.
see everyone else next month, June 11th, for Ginger Woolbridge. Take care.